Welcome to Spilling the Tea with Dr. Joyce, a podcast that goes deeper than the highlight reel on social media. I'm Dr. Joyce Park, a board-certified dermatologist, content creator at Tea with MD, and founder of Skin Refinery Dermatology Clinic. Each week, I will be joined here by a remarkable guest, and together we'll discuss stories and strategies for balancing our challenging careers with our personal relationships while making time for beauty routines and self-care. So grab your favorite cup of tea, get comfy, and let's get ready to spill the tea together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Spilling the Tea with Dr. Joyce. We are back here today with a special guest, Amy Chang. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. Amy and I got to know each other through social media, but we haven't actually met in real life. So this is our first face-to-face conversation, and I'm really excited to hear all about all of your inspiration and your career path and how you managed to make everything work. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Joyce. This is a really exciting conversation, and I love what you're doing with the podcast and talking with women about how they juggle everything. So happy to be here. And I feel like even though we haven't met in real life, I feel like I know you from just following you for so long, and we've been chatting in the DMs. But one of these days, we're going to make it happen.
Absolutely. I actually am going to be in LA in a couple weeks, so I'm going to reach out to you.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with just introducing Amy. So I'm going to read a little bio that we put together, and then we'll jump right into the questions. So Amy Chang is the founder of Bond and Avant, which is a beauty and wellness blog. In Bond and Avant, she shares personal reviews and experiences focusing on skincare, hair care, makeup, and all sorts of other beauty topics, as well as sharing life behind the scenes as a beauty creator. She is a content creator on all the social media platforms where she has a loyal following base of over 2 million around the world. Besides skincare, she has also openly shared her experience growing up as an adoptee and is an advocate for the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. She currently lives in SoCal in LA with her husband and her 2 adorable daughters. Welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thanks. So to start off with, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your history as an adoptee, which you really shared openly about before. So you said that you vividly remember the feeling of being given up for adoption. Can you tell us a little bit more about your memory of those moments and how that has really shaped you and how you approach your life, and also how that influences you as a parent now?
Yeah. So it's not a memory in the way that we think of memories like, oh, I remember what I ate yesterday for lunch, right? And you have a visual memory of that. It's more like an emotional feeling of a memory and I believe that all of our experiences, they live within us somewhere. Either we have a visual memory of it or it's somewhere in our body that happened. And I believe deeply that memory is still there with me. Just to give a little context. So I was adopted when I was a baby from Korea, but I went through foster care and I was adopted twice, and thankfully landed with just the most wonderful, kind human beings. My parents, I love them so much. And I feel like being adopted has really helped shape my life by giving me this perspective of gratitude. Like that's just how I approach my life in all facets is, seeing what my life could have been like and feeling so thankful where it is now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have 2 close friends here in Seattle who are also adoptees from Korea. And they've shared with me that at various points, they actually went back to Korea to try to look for their birth parents or find out more information about where they were born. And have you ever experienced that, or is that something that you've ever thought about doing?
When I was younger, about 15, 16 years old, I really wanted to find my birth parents. And at the time I spoke to my parents about it, and my mom just felt I was too young, that I wasn't emotionally ready for something like that, which I'm so grateful looking back that she did that. And she had the foresight to protect me in that way. Because I have friends of mine who are also Korean adopted. And one of them found her birth mother and met with her when she was 15 years old. And it was just too heavy of an emotional experience for her at that age. And she feels like she wasn't able to fully process it and get the most out of that interaction because she was so young. So I'm really glad that my mom did that. And then as I got older, that desire to want to find my birth parents, it kind of faded away because I realized that, like, when I was younger, I thought, okay, I need to have these answers. I need to know, why was I given up for adoption? What happened? What does my birth mother look like? What does my birth father look like? And I felt like I needed those to understand who I am. But as I got older, I realized that I don't need that for answers, because it's not about finding these past components of myself to understand who I am. It's more about, well, and this is how I approach life also, is like, life is about creating who you want to be. And as I got older, that became my focus. Like, oh, I don't need to look back for answers. I can just look in the now and turn inward on who I want to be and who I am, and have that be the form that I take as I move through life.
I love that. I think you put it so eloquently. And for a lot of us, I think we can get stuck and dwell on things that may have happened in the past, and that impacts our ability to move forwards and dream bigger. And I think the ability that you were able to see things in that light really also is a testament to how wonderful your adopted parents were, that they created a very warm and loving, supportive environment for you to grow up in, that you truly had confidence in yourself too. And I'm curious, how have they, your adopted parents, how have they influenced your, maybe your career path, or how you dreamed your life would turn out?
Yeah, so my parents are incredible. They're not perfect. They made a lot of mistakes as parents, which I've talked with them about. But I think they knew where their shortcomings were, and they weren't afraid to look to others for support and for help. And I feel like that's what made them really successful as parents at the end of the day, is because when I was struggling in my early teen years, just trying to deal with the trauma that I had gone through from, being adopted, being in foster care, growing up in Minnesota, being a transracial adoptee and feeling like I didn't fit in anywhere, and having white parents and growing up in a Jewish community because my family is Jewish, they didn't have all of the answers, and they knew that. And so they put me into therapy right away when I was young. And so I was in therapy from the age of 12 until 19. And I went once a week, every week for all those years. And it really helped to arm me with powerful tools on how to understand, like, my own self-talk, how to turn inward and understand my feelings, how to communicate my feelings. So that was one really powerful thing that they gave me. And my mom, both my parents really experienced some generational trauma from their own upbringings, and they looked to therapy to help them. They were, I'd say, like, pretty new to be open to therapy at that time. I feel my parents are kind of hippies. They're, they meditate and they read, Buddhism, and they're into poetry. And just to, like, give you a sense, when they got married, they went on their honeymoon and they went hiking in the mountains in Colorado, and they just, like, walked naked through the forest, like, holding hands.
That's the level of, like, free spirit.
Yes. Yeah.
That they are. Yeah.
They have that element to them, which I love so much. So they really gave the gift of, I feel like, emotional intelligence that I may not have that had they not have been as self-aware and open to therapy. So that was one of the biggest things they gave me. And then both of my parents, I mean, they love nature. As I mentioned, my mom was a landscape architect. My dad was in veterinary medicine, and he was in academics. And so they really passed on to my sister and I just this love for being in nature, gardening, animals, the sciences, but also, like, healthy eating and cooking. My mom's Italian. And so growing up cooking. Mealtime was always a big event. A whole family had to sit down together, and it was a big production. And I still remember, like, one of the first things my mom taught me how to cook was pesto, like homemade pesto sauce. And I mean, my mom always had a fresh vegetable garden. I would go out among like her many gardens out in the backyard, and I would play amongst the tomato vines and the zucchini leaves, and she'd give me a colander and I would pick carrots from the garden, and then she would steam them for dinner. So they really infused into me like this love for healthy food, for nature, for science, for animals, all of this. And you may be hearing that, some listeners, and thinking, okay, well, how did you end up in skincare and beauty? But I feel like actually all of that is such a big part of beauty, because skincare and cosmetics, that's science. You know, makeup, that's art and beauty. To have external beauty and health, you have to nourish the inside with healthy food. So it kind of, all these things that they taught me, I bring to my content, and I feel are really big components to the beauty space.
Yeah, no, that's actually a perfect segue. I love your content, especially your Get Ready With Me's, because you are a fabulous storyteller. I remember a lot of the stories that you've told, in particular one about how you met your husband. It was a multi-part story, and it just had me like on the edge of my seat, because you ended one part on a cliffhanger where he was like, we should just be friends. I still remember that. You're just such a great storyteller. And as we shift to talking about your career, I wanted to ask you, how did you become a content creator? Because you started off at L'Oreal. Can you walk us through your journey and your path to becoming Bond and Avant?
So I was very briefly at L'Oreal. I interned at Shu Uemura, which is one of their brands, in their PR department. And then I went on to work at a PR agency in New York City. And I very quickly from that experience learned that I'm not a corporate girly, and I did not do well there. I think my creative personality just really struggled in a corporate environment. And so when my boyfriend and I at the time, now husband, we moved from New York to LA for his job, I knew I didn't want to go back and work at an agency, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I actually was trying to interview to work in social media for some beauty brands. There were a couple of social media coordinator positions I interviewed for, and it's so funny because I obviously didn't get the job, and
thank God.
But while I was interviewing, I also was toying with the idea of possibly going back to school and getting a master's to be a teacher. I was doing some volunteer work at the time, helping kids. And I thought, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. And in the midst of all of that, I decided to start a blog and just explore this other passion that I have, which is beauty. So it was a complete passion project, totally just a hobby. And I started interviewing plastic surgeons and dermatologists and estheticians and beauty brand founders, just anyone and anything that I found interesting. I was like, oh, I want to know more about this. So I would reach out, I interviewed them, and then wrote about it on my blog, never thinking that it would turn into anything. But slowly women started to follow me. And then I got onto social media on Instagram, and I built an audience, but it was pretty slow going. At that time, Instagram was really saturated when I got on. It was like 2016. And so I plateaued at like 25,000 followers, and I was okay with that. And I thought, okay, this is just where I'm going to be. It's just going to be this passion project, and I'm going to have this great like community and online, and that'll be it. And I'll be a mom. And then I was talking with these two content creators who had just come back from VidCon. This was 2019. And as you know, Dr. Joyce, the influencer game is a young person game. Like, I'm 37 years old.
Me too. I just turned 37. We're the same age.
At the time, I felt kind of ancient going to some of these events because it wasn't like it is now, where there's a whole range of ages of content creators. So these two young girls, very lovely. One was 20 and the other one was like 21. They had just come back from VidCon, and they said, oh my gosh, Amy, you have to get on TikTok. Everyone was talking about TikTok at VidCon. This is 2019. I was like, TikTok, what is this? So I got on, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. I was doing the dancing videos and the lip sync videos and just kind of experimenting.
Same, back in the day.
Yeah. And then I decided, well, what if I just make these little funny beauty videos? And so I did one, and overnight it got 2 million views. And then I did another one and a couple more million views. And I was like, oh, there's something here. Like, people are saying that they want this type of content. So I started to create more beauty content and take all of the knowledge that I gained from doing the interviews and writing for my blog and started to put that information to little tidbit videos on TikTok. And they just popped off, and my platform started to grow, and I could feel that there was a lot of momentum here. So I remember I only had one daughter at the time, and I would put Chloe to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and I would go into my bathroom and I would film for 5 hours, video, everything.
Wow.
And then I'd edit them, and then I'd post all 5 videos the next day. And I did that every night for months. Because
wow, that's dedication.
You feel that momentum at certain moments in your career, and you're like, okay, this is one of those times I'm going to have to put in extra time and energy to get to that next milestone. So I definitely felt it there. And then after I had my second daughter, I again felt that I had to put in another push, and this time on Reels, because Reels was pretty new. And I saw that, okay, a lot of the videos I repost from TikTok to Reels are getting a lot of reach. And I started to grow on Instagram. So I started doing the same thing. I'd put both girls to bed, 8 o'clock. I'd go into my office. I would edit content, film in my bathroom. And I was going to bed at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I eventually got shingles like 5-6 months after having my second daughter.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't take any maternity leave after having her, which I look back and I regret. On the one hand, I really wish that I had slowed down and been present for that time. But on the other hand, I felt like my career needed me to push and lean in at that moment. So,
wow.
And now here I am.
Yeah, that is really amazing. And TikTok changed your life.
Yeah.
Those 2 girls who went to VidCon, who encouraged you to get on TikTok, they changed your life. I mean,
I thank them all.
Life as a content creator is very different from what it may appear from the outside looking in. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot. In our DMs, we've talked about how burnout is a real problem in the creator industry. And sometimes even when I set aside time to film, I'm like, am I adding anything new to this space? I don't have any ideas. I feel stuck. It's like writer's block, except with filming. So how do you deal with burnout with creating content, especially at the rate that you are creating content at?
Yeah. So let's see. I definitely get burnout at times, and I don't get it as frequently now because I've scaled back a lot on the amount of content that I put out. When I was doing a video every single day, that led me to burnout really fast, like within 6 months. But I take periodic breaks. I just took one pretty recently, like a couple weeks ago. I did 5 days off of social media completely. I didn't even check my phone. And it was it felt so good. I went outside, I gardened in my little vegetable garden. I read a book that I've been meaning to read for a long time. And that is where I get creative inspiration to then bring it to my platform and bring them something new and interesting. So it really is important for me to take those breaks so that I can find outside inspiration and come up with really interesting, value-driven content for them. Because if I just try to push constantly, it is hard. I do feel like I run out of ideas, and I feel like the quality of my content goes down because I'm trying to just have this huge volume of output. And at a certain point, you kind of have to take a breather to like refill your creative bucket.
Yeah. And I love that idea of taking breaks. I was thinking, when was the last time that I took a few days even off of social media completely? I can't even remember even consuming, because sometimes consuming social media content can be really tiring as well. So I'm going to make that a goal this year, that I also need to take a break at some point. I think that would be good.
I had a seasoned, like, long-time content creator who's been doing this for like 15 years tell me to take breaks. This was a couple of years ago. I was feeling immense burnout, and I DM'd her and I was like, I don't know how you do it. You have kids, you know, have a business, all of this stuff. And she's like, you just have to take breaks. You have to force yourself periodically to take a weekend or a week off, and don't even consume content. Like, don't even go on the apps. And at the time that sounded crazy to me. I was like, I couldn't even imagine myself doing that. I was like, there's absolutely no way. Like, at that time I was doing 7 videos a week. I was doing, 2 hours of DMs every day, answering all the comments on all my videos. And I thought, if I don't do that, what will happen? Will my community still be there? Will I still be serving them in the way they want to be served? And what I've come to realize, because that was like 3 years ago, is that the community will still be there.
Yeah, and absolutely.
It's okay to take breaks. And if anything, I have found it makes me a better content creator. After the break, I go back, I'm excited. I have fresh ideas, and I bring them something really interesting that they get excited about.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And I think about, even as a consumer, if one of my favorite influencers and content creators take a break, it doesn't impact me. Like, I still will see their content when they come back. Sometimes things don't even get served in chronological order. Most times they aren't. So really, I think we put the pressure on ourselves to constantly be on and creating and driving volume and high quality and stuff. But really, to our community, they want us to take breaks. They want us to be well rested and happy. And so I think one element of being happy as a content creator is also figuring out where to outsource and how much to take on yourself. And I know we've had this conversation before, but I was curious, Amy, if you could share, how do you do your social media? Like, do you have an editor? Do you have someone who helps you with community engagement, like comments and DMs? Or do you just literally do everything yourself? I would love to know.
I do everything myself.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not the right person to ask about outsourcing. I don't know. It feels, it's really hard for me. It's just really hard. I tried having people edit videos. Like, we had a nanny when my kids were, we had a nanny for 1.5 years. She moved at the end of this year. We loved her. She was great. But I actually trained her to help me edit videos, and she would come with me to events when my kids were at school.
Oh, wow.
I had an event in the day, and she would help me film, and then she would do the first round of editing. And that was helpful, but there's still no one who's going to do it the way I do it. Right. And it is a creative pursuit, right? So there's like little things that if I zoom in here, or if I cut it like this, or it does affect visual storytelling. So I have found that I prefer to do the editing myself. And then I did try having her help me with DMs and comments, but that I found didn't work, at least for me, because I like to gather that qualitative information and know, like, what is my audience responding to? What questions are they asking me in the DMs? Because then that helps shape what I deliver to them. So even though it is really time consuming, I feel it's one of the most important aspects of what I do is staying in touch with my community and understanding what they like, what they don't like, what they want from me, so that I can create the best content for them. So,
and that's why we love you, because you are so responsive, but I know it's a lot of work. Yeah. I'm kind of actually similar to you. And it's funny because you and I talked about this maybe last year about outsourcing and finding an editor. I think it was because I had seen one of your Getting Ready With Me videos that was really highly edited and looked very professional, like a really quick shortcuts. And I was like, Amy, do you have an editor? And you were like, it's me. But I similarly also tried an editor for my short form content for 1 month. And I felt like they looked good, but they weren't really my style. And it felt not as authentic as the content that I edited myself. Now for long form content, I do have an editor. I love him. He's great. And he does my YouTube videos, which it would take me way too long to edit. So he does my YouTube videos and my podcast, and he's wonderful. But in terms of community engagement, I feel like that's where it's hard for me to respond to all the comments and DMs because you only have so much time in a day. But one place that I've really started to outsource is, have you heard of this Chinese app called Xiaohongshu?
No.
It's like the Red Book.
Oh.
So it's kind of like TikTok plus Instagram, but for China. And it's an international platform. And I just launched on there. And for that, I really needed help because everything is in Chinese and I can read at a very elementary level, but I would not be able to edit my own videos and do things like that. So that has actually been a great exercise in me stepping back a little and learning to trust someone else with my content. And that has been interesting. You should check it out. I think your content would do really well on there.
Okay. Yeah. You said it's like a Chinese TikTok?
Yeah. It's different from Douyin. It's kind of like Instagram plus TikTok, but on a Chinese platform, and it's huge. It is huge. A couple of actually quite a few American content creators are on there as well.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
See, I'm going to be like those two VidCon girls for you and launch you into Asia and onto the international stage.
Well, I'll have to learn Chinese. We'll have to figure that out.
You can do subtitles. But anyways, something fun and interesting for you to think about. One thing that I think is really cool is I followed you for a long time and you get to do so many cool things ranging from traveling around the world, going to events, meeting celebrities. You've had so many interesting opportunities. Looking back on your career as a content creator, what are some of your favorite opportunities that you've gotten?
So there are two that stand out. The first one is when I went to France with Dior Beauty. It was this incredible 5-day trip, and we went to see Christian Dior's house where he grew up and the rose fields, and they took us to the lab where the skincare is made, and that was such an incredible trip, and I really love their team. The second thing is, and I did not anticipate that this would happen, but it's been really wonderful. So I've had the opportunity the past few years to do consulting, and I've been working closely with ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, and their CPG clients on campaigns, new product launches, how to speak to and reach the beauty community on TikTok. And it's been really fun and rewarding to exercise that strategic part of my brain and to also dispel the often misconceptions that I feel surround being an influencer, that it's easy, that there isn't strategic thought put into the content. And so that's been really fun.
Oh, that sounds really cool. And how lucky are they to be able to have your perspective? I think you would definitely add a lot from your background experience.
Thanks, Dr. Joyce.
As someone who also travels a lot, something that's always on the back of my mind is balancing travel and work opportunities with being a mom. Yes. So I wanted to ask you, you're so busy, you're a content creator, you travel, you speak, you consult. How do you make it work? How do you and your husband make it work?
Yeah. So I'm so grateful that I have a supportive partner. And if I didn't have him, I don't know how I would be able to juggle having kids and doing my career. I mean, I definitely would need a nanny for sure if he wasn't as supportive as he is. But in addition to having a supportive partner, I think it's really important to just be that I'm clear on my priorities. So I know that I am a mother first, a businesswoman second, and then a wife third, and unfortunately, like a friend, that kind of comes down there. Like I don't see my friends as often as I used to. And it's just about prioritizing. Like my kids come before anything. So I really structure my life around their needs. Like we don't have a nanny anymore. And I share drop-off pickup duties. I take the kids to activities, doing homework with them, putting them to bed. That stuff, that comes first. And then I fit in work around them. So when they're at school or they're at camp, because it's summer right now, from the hours of when they get dropped off at 8:30 until when they get picked up at 4 o'clock, that's my work day. And I try to be as efficient as possible and fit as much in there as I can. And then if it spills over and I need to do work after that, then once they come home, I'm offline. I'm mom. And then once they go to bed, that's when I go back into my office. And a lot of times I'll do a lot of editing in there. I'll do the DMs, comments, I'll answer emails, things that I didn't get to during the day. But it just means that I have less time for other things, you know? Whereas before, like when I was younger, but before I had kids, I'd go to a boozy brunch with my friends on the weekend for 5 hours, right? And we would catch up and talk. And now I have to find other little ways to fit that in that allows me the time and energy to dedicate to these other pursuits of being a mom, of running my business. So instead of, you know, these 5-hour brunches, it's now I call them in the car when I'm on my way to pick up and we chat for 30 minutes there. Or, you know, we'll like FaceTime after the kids are in bed or something like that. But I will say that that setup has worked really well for me as a mother with my kids and my career, but it hasn't been great for my marriage. Like there's this quote out there that they say you can do two things really well. You can only do two things really well. Once you start to try to do 3 or 4 things, then the quality starts to go down. So for me right now in this phase of my life, I'm really focused on being a mother and being a businesswoman. And, you know, my marriage has suffered. And so the past 6 months, I've realized like, okay, I need to take some time to dedicate to nurturing my marriage again, because for the last, I don't know, like 4 years, it's been on the back burner where it just hasn't been a priority. Thankfully, my husband and I have been together for 15 years. So I always tell him, I'm like, I've built up a lot of goodwill. Okay. You remember all those years when we didn't have kids and it was all about you. And I cooked you all these amazing meals and we traveled the world together and we had all these amazing memories. I'm like, remember that time. Okay. But we're in marriage counseling now, and it's been really helpful to just kind of talk through, hey, what are our needs right now? How do we make sure that our marriage is still healthy too? Because that is the foundation of everything also, right? For my kids to be happy, for me to have a successful business, I have to have a happy marriage, at least for me in my situation, right? So that means I have to scale back in some way. And I have scaled back on the amount of content that I do in the last 6 months because I'm like, okay, I need to dedicate some time to my marriage right now. So instead of doing 5 videos a week, I'll do 5 videos one week. And then the next week, maybe I'll just post once or post twice. You know, and I used to do these really in-depth story series on Instagram that would take me hours to do. And I'm like, I don't have time to do that anymore. Like something has to give. And so if I'm going to take something away from the career bucket in terms of energy to put it over here in the marriage bucket, then I have to be okay with readjusting what the balance looks like. And I'm okay with that right now. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you for being so honest and sharing so openly about that. I think this is something that all of us really struggle with, is finding enough time in the day to fulfill all of our roles as mom, wife, career woman, and sometimes also being a daughter. You know, a lot of people we're in that sandwich generation where you're taking care of your parents sometimes and also the young kiddos. And I do think it is really hard to find time to do everything. And multiple times a day, I ask myself, like, what am I doing this for? Why does it feel like I'm always in survival mode? Our nanny actually went back to Taiwan when my daughter was 3 months old. We thought she was coming back, but then she didn't. So we haven't had a nanny for the last 2 months. And it has just been like a struggle. Like, it's funny because I feel like if I worked a traditional clinic job where I was gone from 9 to 5, that might even be a little bit easier than this in between where my husband and I are like, okay, I have a meeting from this time to this time. Then you'll take the baby from this time to this time. Then, someone will have to go pick up the older kid, take him to the park. Someone's going to have to work on dinner. And it's just this constant, trying to fit all the pieces together. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm in the thick of it right now.
Yeah.
My top priority, like you mentioned, priorities, my top priority right now is finding a nanny so that we can have a little bit more of our lives back. And I just, since having my second, I feel like I haven't had any time for self-care. Like I jumped back into work at 6 weeks. I did my first business trip at 6 weeks postpartum. And since then, I've been on like 4 other business trips. And I feel like my body is really telling me that I need to prioritize working out, exercise, eating healthy, and just recovery. So that's what I'm trying to work on right now.
Those trips, I know they look really fun and they are fun and wonderful, but they are, and I'm sure this might be the same for you, like incredibly stressful because you're there and you're like, oh my God, I have to capture this content and then I have to like go back and edit and you're adjusting to the time zone. So the fact that you went on all those trips, oh my gosh, like I feel tired listening to that. Like, oh my gosh, Dr. Joyce.
Maybe partially it was like FOMO, because I feel like, oh, I got this cool opportunity.
Yeah.
If I don't take it, maybe I won't get this opportunity again. And I will say the most difficult part of all the trips was actually pumping and figuring out how to bring the milk internationally from London to New York back to Seattle. I saved it. Yeah. And so honestly, it has been a tough couple of months. Really fun because she's at a really fun age. She's 5 months now, but also just a really tough time. And one thing I wanted to ask you, which I ask all of my guests, is what do you do for yourself to take care of your mental health and for self-care?
So I do 2 things. The first is my nighttime routine. I love my nighttime routine. Even if it's 1 a.m, I go in there and I do it and I'm in there for 30, 40 minutes and I'm doing It's so healing for me to take that time. And it might be the only time for self-care I get throughout the whole day, but I love that. And then I recently started, I'd say like the last 6 months this year, I decided, hey, building muscle and maintaining muscle mass is a big priority for me because I noticed once I got to my mid 30s, I noticed like my muscles just felt weaker and thinner. So I started going to Barry's. And I only go once a week, but it's enough. And it's almost meditative because, I can kind of just like zone out, not think about anything. There's like the pounding music and I'm like doing the workouts, but that feels really nice. So I do that.
I love that. I aspire to be able to go to Barry's. One of my best friends, she's a Barry's fanatic, my best friend from college, and she actually goes every single day of the entire year. She's very fit. And she took me to a class in Seattle. And this was when I was, I don't know, a couple months postpartum. And I was like, I cannot do any of these things. But my goal is to slowly build myself up to that again. And I totally agree with you. Building muscles and muscle strength is so key especially for us, Asian women with small frames. Like we are at such high risk for developing osteoporosis when we're older. So I'm right there with you. That's like my number one goal this year is to like work on my physical fitness. So. Well, Amy, I know we are coming up to the end of our time together. So I just wanted to thank you so much for your time today, for being so open and honest and sharing about everything from your childhood to your life now and your life as a mom and your role as a wife. So really, thank you so much for your time. Please tell the audience where they can find you on all the platforms and how we can keep in touch with you.
Yeah. So my blog is not active anymore. I actually stopped writing on it about a couple years ago, basically when I got on TikTok and kind of transitioned to short form video. But you can find me at Bond and Avant, BONDENAVANT on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts, and Amy Chang on Instagram.
Perfect. And we'll link all of that in the show notes as well, so that will be easily accessible. Thank you so much again, Amy.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today for our real, unfiltered conversations. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite audio podcast platform. And if you're more visually inclined, all of our video podcast episodes are available on my YouTube channel at Tea with MD. For more beauty and skincare content, don't forget to check out my Instagram and TikTok at Tea with MD. Remember, life isn't just about the curated content we see on social media. It's about these real conversations we have with each other. So continue spilling the tea with your friends, family, and loved ones. And together we can create a more open, connected, and authentic community. Until next time.